Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.
Blog Talk Radio.
Anderson Cooper is keeping them honest. AC 360, CNN weeknights, 8 Eastern.
There's some very graphic details woven through this case, which may be too explicit for younger viewers.
Travis Alexander never had a chance. 27 stab wounds, a gunshot to the face, his throat slit ear to ear. When friends found his body, he'd already been dead 5 days.
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
So that there's blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut his wrist?
It's all over the place.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
That ex-girlfriend is Jodi Arias, now on trial for murdering Travis Alexander back in 2008. She's facing the death penalty. This case has court watchers riveted, not only because of the sheer brutality of it, but also because of the couple's salacious sexual relationship. They videotaped themselves having sex and took provocative photos. On the day of the murder, June 4th, 2008, the two snapped naked photos of each other at Alexander's home right before the killing. Those pictures were recovered from the memory card of a digital camera police found in his washing machine. According to investigators, a photo taken at 1:40 p.m. shows Arias posing nude on Alexander's bed. Later, at 5:22 p.m., a photo was taken and deleted, showing Alexander naked in the shower. Then at 5:30 p.m., another photo of Alexander. Police say just 2 minutes later, he was dead. 5:32 p.m., this time-stamped photo shows Alexander's body on the shower floor. What exactly happened that night is still unclear, in part because investigators can't get a straight or at least consistent story out of Arias. The first time she was questioned, July 15, 2008, Arias said she wasn't with Alexander the day he died. This was before she knew investigators had pictures putting her at the crime scene. Listen.
I was nowhere near Mesa. I was nowhere near Phoenix.
Then, after police matched a bloody handprint at the scene to Arias and told her of the photos they'd found, she told a different story, this time a home invasion.
You didn't run to the neighbors, you didn't try calling. You knew they were in his house.
I was really scared. I was really freaked out of my mind.
Okay. I don't believe you.
2 years later, in 2010, yet another story. Yes, she says, she did kill Travis Alexander, but it was self-defense. Her lawyer is making the case for domestic violence.
Jodi believed that Travis was going to kill her. Travis left Jodi no other option but to defend herself.
As Arias tells it, it all started with those naked pictures. She testified that while she and Alexander were snapping photos, she dropped the camera and Alexander got incredibly angry. So this time, she says, she grabbed the gun she knew Alexander kept in his closet.
I grabbed the gun. I ran out of the closet. He was chasing me. I turned around and we were in the middle of the bathroom. I pointed it at him with both of my hands. I thought that would stop him. If someone were pointing a gun at me, I would stop. But he just kept running. He got like a linebacker. He got kind of low and grabbed my waist. But before he did that, as he was lunging at me, the gun went off. I didn't mean to shoot him.
But what about the knife and those dozens of stab wounds? Arias told the court she simply can't remember how that happened.
Once you broke away from him, what do you remember?
Almost nothing for a long time.
Do you remember stabbing Travis Alexander?
I have no memory of stabbing him.
The couple first met back in 2006 at a convention in Las Vegas. She was an aspiring photographer. He was a salesman and motivational speaker who was active in the Mormon Church. They started dating a few months later. even though he lived in Mesa, Arizona, and she lived hours away in California. Arias soon converted to Mormonism like her boyfriend and agreed to be baptized. On the day of her baptism, she told the court Alexander tied her up while they were both still wearing sacred garments, then forced her to have anal sex.
After this encounter on this spiritual day, how did you feel about yourself?
I didn't feel very good. I kind of felt like a used piece of toilet paper.
Arias claims Alexander often abused her physically and sexually, but on the couple's phone sex tapes, played in court, she seemed to be enjoying herself.
The way you know that it sounds like you're a 12-year-old girl having her first orgasm. It's so hot.
How things turned from phone sex to this is still a mystery, but investigators say there's no question Travis Alexander suffered. The medical examiner says he was stabbed first, then shot, so it may have taken him some time to die. Crime scene photos show his hands bruised and bloodied, which may indicate he struggled to fight off his attacker, who was stabbing him. In court today, under cross-examination, the prosecutor did his best to expose Jodi Arias as a cold-blooded killer and shatter her account of what happened the night Alexander was killed.
Other than you, who would be sure about your statement?
God.
Well, God's not here. We can't subpoena him, right?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Are you sure that we can't? Because it seems like you're leaving the door open for that.
No matter how hard prosecutors come at her, Jodi Arias has stuck to her story. Before the trial, she spoke to Inside Edition from jail.
No jury is going to convict me.
Why not?
Because I'm innocent, and you can mark my words on that one. No jury will convict me.
Later in court, she said that was because she planned to kill herself first. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the King Jordan Radio Show for Season 5, Episode 6, October 13th, 2016. Tonight's topics include Jodi Arias and the book that is Trapped with Miss Arias, Donald Trump, did he cross the line, Derrick Rose, a New York Knicks guard. We'll talk about the rape trial that he's going through. Weight loss of our guest, that and your questions at 347-857-2950. Let's bring in the attorney formerly with Jodi Arias, Kirk Nurmi joins us. Good evening, Kirk. How are you?
Good, Jordan. How you doing, buddy?
Okay. So it's been almost 2 years now since the cases, just about at least. How does your emotions feel, if you will?
Well, we're going on about a year and a half now, and really the focus of my life has been outside of Jodi Arias with the with the cancer diagnosis that befell me the fall of 2015, and getting past that, and really the focus of my life has been, doing what I can to reclaim my health.
Right. Now, you did write a book, though, Trapped with Miss Arias, that was a part one. Now, is there any information on part two?
Well, there's no set date. I think one thing that's clear is to me is 2016 is progressing is that it certainly took me a lot more time to reclaim my health and get things going, and probably something we'll talk about later. I felt a lot of inspiration to write another book about weight loss and some of the things I learned along the way as I lost the 45 pounds that I gained during chemotherapy, and that was really kind of where my head was at. So when I said I stepped away from Miss Arias, I did. And so I don't have any estimation on when part 2 will come forward.
Indeed. Now, that book took you approximately a long time to make, right? That one book, number one.
Well,
right?
you know, that book took about 6 months, and it was a lot of work over the 6 months. It was a lot more work than I ever imagined it would be. You know, you think about writing a book, you think, oh, you're just going to hang out and just type away and it'll be great, but it's a lot more work. And that's one thing I learned throughout the process, is that what really fuels me as an author is the inspiration. And really my inspiration was elsewhere in terms of my writing endeavors, and that's why I'll be coming out with the new and improved, I think, weight loss book before the end of the year.
No question about it. I just want to inform our listeners that for some reason the stream is telling me that we will only be on the stream live for another couple minutes. So you could either call up the show and listen, 347-857-2950, or you could listen to the replay a little bit later on tonight. So just want to warn you that the stream will be stopping in approximately 3 minutes. Not my fault, just wanted to pass that along to my good listeners. Indeed. Now, let's just, with Jodi Arias, now, according to what you said in the book, for all intents and purposes, you really didn't want to be a part of this trial. Do I have that right?
Well, yeah, sure. You know, in the book I document, I kind of, because a lot of people had some misconceptions, so I talk about how I was assigned the case as a public defender, how when I left the public defender's office, it was my intention and desire to leave the case behind, but the court saw otherwise, and I respected that, and I had the duty to go forward and defend Miss Arias consistent with the rights she is allowed like any other citizen of this country, and certainly with the heightened scrutiny of the death penalty being present in the trial.
I see some people, at least the perception is like a Jose Baez. He likes to be in the spotlight. He likes to be maybe hated, if you will. And maybe there are just some people that, for all intents and purposes, that's not in their DNA. Is it fair to say you are one of those people that would not like to be a part of high-profile trials in the future?
Well, you know, ultimately, with everything that's happened for me with the cancer and that sort of thing, I don't see myself practicing law much anymore. I did some this year. My heart wasn't in it the same way, and I really feel like, for the time being anyway, my current mission to help people lose weight, to help them transform in the way that I feel like I have over the past few years. So that's really where my heart lies now, and because of the relationship between cancer and stress, being a part of any trial, because to me, whether a trial is high profile or not, it's really about the client and the impact it's going to have on their life. And that can be a very stressful endeavor for the attorney. So myself, part of my transformation in 2016 was really examining where I wanted to go with my future, and I don't see practicing law as being much of a part of it going forward. But to answer your question, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you attribute anything of the Jodi Arias trial, maybe adding to the cancer?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a very stressful time, and my personal belief is all those years and all that working certainly couldn't have been good for my health, and it may very well be possible, certainly, that was one of the most stressful professional endeavors that I've had, and yeah, that very well could have played a major role in my coming down with cancer. You know, one of the things that's a reality of life is that each one of us have the DNA within us to give rise to cancer. It's just a matter of what our bodies do to actually kind of give life to those destructive cells. And I think stress and some other bad habits are part of that. And so I think definitely that it couldn't have been good, and it probably did play a big role, although certainly I cannot, quote unquote, prove it. But I certainly think it played a role.
So yeah, so you're saying you're finishing up with law now. When did that?
Well, I started slowing. Yeah, well, when I got done, when I finished my chemotherapy in late January, and kind of in February started the process of kind of recapturing my health, as I talked about earlier. And, I went back to law. I was thinking, well, I don't know what else I would do. And I took a few cases and that sort of thing. But as the months went by, I found myself really more and more thinking about what I could do to contribute to the world in other ways. And that got me thinking about writing the weight loss book. I've been doing some public speaking now. I spoke to cancer groups. I went and talked to the Wyoming Bar Association, talking about the importance of pro bono service. I've talked to high school classes. So I'm just doing a lot of neat things that I think that I never would have done. So many times we get stuck in a rut as people, and we're afraid to make big changes. And I guess with cancer hitting my life, that made me less fearful of rerouting myself and trying something new, because really it was a matter of, did I want to spend the next 15, 20 years of my working life doing the kind of things I've been doing? And the real answer is probably not. And so that's why I'm exploring these other avenues, and I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time doing it. I enjoy the speaking, and I'm looking forward to more endeavors.
That's awesome to hear from that standpoint. Have you heard from Miss Arias in the last couple of years?
Well, any communication we had would be something that I couldn't talk about, so we'll just leave it at that.
Have you heard from your co-counsel? The name is.
Well, no, again, Jennifer and I, whatever conversations we have or don't have would be something that I wouldn't want to go into. So. Well,
I'm not asking you about the conversation. I'm just asking, generally speaking.
Well, again, whether we have or haven't isn't even a subject matter that I would want to go into. So.
Right. Absolutely. And so this is a year and a half. And in the book, is still available, of course. And for the people that are listening now, how could they get their hands on this book?
Right. Well, the Arias book is called Trapped with Miss Arias. It's part 1 of 3, and that's available on Amazon, and it's available on all the different outlets of Amazon, be that in Canada or Australia, that sort of thing. And the other thing people can do, if they're interested in the weight loss book that we've been talking about, my new one that's coming out by the end of the year, they can go to NurmiUnchained.com and sign up for my free ebook. So they can do that, and when it comes out, they'll receive a free PDF copy of the book.
Absolutely. And what is your total weight loss now?
Well, I gained about 75. I lost 75, between trials. and I gained about 45 during chemotherapy because of the chemicals and the steroids, that sort of thing. And maybe a couple months ago, I hit that benchmark. And so I've been pretty steady at, kind of being what I call my pre-chemo weight. And right now I'm working on my fitness. I'm hoping to run a half marathon in January to kind of commemorate my anniversary of being declared, or my cancer being declared to be in remission. And I'm doing CrossFit now. So I'm trying to really up my fitness level. And like I say, the cancer chemicals and things are really hard on the body, and they really weaken the muscles, the immune system, the joints. And I'm really doing all I can to get as much as I can back from that. So that's kind of, like I say, the focus of my intentions right now.
5 years ago, if somebody would have told you that all this was going down, would you have been shocked?
Yeah. Yes, I would have. Certainly the word surreal comes to mind. When I was back in Wyoming, that was the place I went to law school, speaking to the Bar Association, and it was surreal to be back there in the capacity that I was. So. But it's an experience that has plus and minuses. Since the trial is over, I've talked to and met a lot of good people, and it's been great in that way. But yeah, I think surreal is the best word I could use.
Good. You didn't like some of the things that were being portrayed. Is there one thing in particular that really bugged you?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of funny when I've been writing this weight loss book. I don't know if I would say it bugged me, but it was one of the most startling to me. It was when between trials when the Dr. Drew show had a panel of attorneys on there discussing my weight loss and the growth of my hair. I think that always stuck out to me, not as a moment that really made me mad, but I thought, boy, we have a tragedy on our hands. We have a beloved young man who's been murdered. We have a girl facing the death penalty, and my hair and weight loss seem trivial by comparison. So I wouldn't say that's the part that upsets me. It just sticks out as part of that, the surrealness of the experience, if you will.
So basically, they were talking about the trial, but concentrating more on you in that. Well, time slot.
Yeah, they had a little bit on the trial, but it was just when the second trial was starting to come back, and there was a lot of scuttlebutt about my weight loss and my hair growth and things like that. And so, yeah, it was very surreal. Very surreal. It's a kind of moment. One of the things I wrote about, I might have talked about this last time. I've been doing some writing for the New York Daily News, and I talk about the reality TV aspect of trials, and that made me think a little bit more of that too. It's like, it's whatever I weigh and whatever my hair length is, it's inconsequential to the greater picture and the tragedy that happened on June 4th, 2008.
No question about it. Donald Trump over on Sunday said a lot of things, but he said this to Hilary Clinton, and I want to get your take on the other side.
But when you talk about apology, I think the one that you should really be apologizing for, and the thing that you should be apologizing for, are the 33,000 emails that you deleted and that you acid washed. And then the 2 boxes of emails and other things last week that were taken from an office and are now missing. And I'll tell you what, I didn't think I'd say this, but I'm going to say it. And I hate to say it, but if I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it. And we're going to have a special prosecutor. When I speak, I go out and speak. The people of this country are furious. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious. There has never been anything like this where emails and you get a subpoena. You get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. And then you acid wash them or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about email.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised. Really? In the first debate,
the audience needs to calm down here.
I told people that it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do and how we're going to really make lives better for people. So once again, go to HillaryClinton.com. We have literally Trump. You can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking. So I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because, you know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Oh my God! Talk about the politic game could be much more put beside giving people things like heart attacks. But in any event, did he cross the line, Donald Trump, when he said that? And we know there's new accusations, but in that little clip there, did you find what he said to be out of bounds?
Yeah, in my opinion, definitely. I mean, this is a first world country. This is a democracy. And threatening to jail one's opponent is akin to a third world election. That is kind of the way dictatorships operate. Eliminating your political opponents. Even if he had intention to do it, campaigning in that regard is silly. Not only that, but he is showing, you know, as a president, it is not his job to prosecute politically as well. He is the commander-in-chief. While that's the head of the executive branch, the AG is supposed to be independent of the president and not prosecuting just based solely on the leave of the president. And not only that, but he is in essence insulted a longtime respected director of the FBI, Mr. Comey, and he has asserted without any basis that I'm aware of who these longstanding people are in the FBI that are upset that an indictment didn't come forward when this whole email issue was examined. So while this might fire up his base, and which makes me think he was certainly not truthful when he says he hates to say it, I think he relishes in saying it. He said it several times since. It is out of bounds. It is inappropriate. And, you know, I've heard analysis on the debate say that the real losers are the American people here, because what we saw in that debate last Sunday was not the sort of political discourse that I think most Americans would like to hear out of their candidates.
Yeah, and it's turning into a show, a lot of people are saying. I mean, it's odd now, though, going on with the accusations with, I don't know if you heard, they came around today. There's audio of, I guess he's kidding around, and he says to a young girl, I'm going to marry you in 10 years. it did sound like he was kidding around when he said that. What, as a father, what is your thoughts on something like that?
Well, I haven't heard. I haven't heard the tape that you're mentioning. Obviously, I've heard the Billy Bush tapes. We've heard now that there's new accusers out there in the arena. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, like I say, if this is on tape, I don't know the context of it, so I'd have a hard time speaking to it. But at the same time, it's certainly probably not anything that any father would want to hear someone say about their daughter in any context. I think it's fair to say, and it's funny because when you brought up last Sunday, I thought, boy, there's Donald Trump says so much, and there's so much coming out so fast. I consider myself a bit of a political junkie, and that is something that I'm not aware of, and that just demonstrates the rapid pace, and it shows the kind of discourse that we're having, right? I mean, the political discourse now is not about policies in the direction country. It's just not, and that's sad in so many ways. And we even see, the libertarian candidate not knowing what Aleppo is and not knowing foreign leaders, and it's like, boy. I always think, and I go back to that, I tweeted this out the other day, that Sarah Palin was a trailblazer in the sense that, in my humble opinion, she proved that you did not need intellect to run for national office, and we're seeing the fruits of that, I think, in this campaign to some degree.
Yeah, it's completely odd. I've heard people say that they're not even going to vote for none of the above. It's gotten that bad. Do you think it's that bad? Well,
that's not my take on it. I mean, anybody who follows me on Twitter will know that I'm a supporter of Hillary Clinton. I think she's supremely qualified to serve as president. But that being said, I know she is not without flaws, and we certainly probably there are people out there that are probably should have at least had the opportunity or taken the opportunity to throw their hat in the ring. But that is the way it goes. And certainly the Republican side, there were many people that Mr. Trump eliminated that certainly seemingly had more capacity, at least experience-wise, in order to assume the position of president.
And Billy Bush, after that audio from 11 years ago was released, was fired immediately from the Today Show. Fair or unfair, in your opinion?
In my opinion, a little unfair. Obviously, there's probably a lot of scandal around it, a lot of negative blowback. But he was probably a very young man at that point in time, and was just laughing along with a guest, a very successful guest, an esteemed guest. He did not make any of the assertions that Mr. Trump made, and quite frankly, maybe he's fired for not offering up contradiction, but typically I think the news media wants people to talk whether they're putting their foot in their mouth or not. So I don't know what the expectation would have been out of Mr. Bush, what he was supposed to do that he didn't do that would cause another network to fire him years down the road. To me, that seems a little unfair.
But you would have those people that would not like the idea of this guy. I see what you're saying, but the perception of somebody that doesn't like women or said some of the things that he said, whether he was 25 or 20 or I think they might have got rid of him because of what they might have felt that the onslaught would have been, just having him there on the set. I would think questions would arise, and he took down his Twitter account so right away. So I think from, there's a couple ways to look at it. I think they did what they did from a business standpoint. I think they had to get rid of him, but at the same time, I understand that it's hard to get rid of him based on just what happened, and the age. There's a lot of mitigating stuff that could have kept him there. So that's my takeaway on that.
Well,
but,
and you're right. The one thing that comes to mind briefly is it just seems like as a society, and Twitter and Facebook and various forms of social media certainly fuel this fire, but we've become far too judgmental on each other and far too divisive. And I think what you're talking about, while I understand NBC's decision from a business perspective, just exemplifies that. We decided, well, this guy that was good enough to hire, that everybody loves, is all of a sudden now deserving of a public visceration because he laughed at Donald Trump 10 years ago. We just have to decide as a society, is that how pious we want to be? So anyway, that's just my little 2 cents.
Maybe they could have went in the middle there and suspended him, a la the other announcer who said, who's that announcer? Not Lester Holt, but...
Is it Don Lemon? Lemon? That Bill Cosby's
announcer.
Accuser should have bit the penis? Yes. I think that might be what you're talking about.
No, this is the guy who would say he did things, he was in different places.
Mr. Williams, Brian Williams, yes.
Right. So he was suspended for a couple of months and then brought back, if you remember correctly.
Yeah. Yes, I do. He is now at MSNBC.
So he could have been in that situation, in my opinion. Also, that might have worked, but that's the way it goes. We have this interesting trial in Los Angeles with a whole lot of stuff going down. Here's some audio of what's going down with this Derrick Rose star and the tragic death of this officer. Let's listen to this.
For Complex News, I'm Pierce Simpson. 2011 may have been 5 years ago, but to Derrick Rose, that has to seem like an eternity. The Chicago native was one of the superstars of the NBA, playing for his hometown team and captured MVP honors over the likes of then-reigning MVP LeBron James. Since that time, D. Rose has suffered countless injuries and negative criticism from his hometown fan base. Ultimately, Rose got dealt from the Chicago Bulls this offseason in a trade with the New York Knicks. Despite the Knicks season about to start and the budding optimism surrounding the new-look team, Rose is in a battle of his own, as an ongoing civil case is taking place in Los Angeles as Rose is being sued for rape, an alleged incident that occurred in 2013. And now a detective that was investigating the case for the LAPD was found dead on Tuesday. The officer was Nadine Hernandez, a 44-year-old veteran detective of the force. Law enforcement was called to her home in Whittier, California on Tuesday afternoon due to reports of an attempted suicide. Hernandez was found with a single fatal gunshot wound to the chest. LAPD firmly believes there's no connection between Rose's case and the death of Hernandez. However, this story continues to twist and turn in strange ways. Rose has asked for a mistrial due to his accuser withholding important text messages from his defense. The accuser is seeking $20 million in damages, and Rose's request for a mistrial was denied on Wednesday. The Knicks opened their season on October 25th against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and as far as Rose's civil case, this doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. That's the news for now. For more today's stories, be sure to keep it locked to Complex by subscribing to us on YouTube. Also, we're gearing up for our first annual Complex Con, which is set to begin on November 5th at the Long Beach Convention Center.
Okay, this is very odd now with this detective and the whole story. What's your takeaway for the New York Knicks guard, Derrick Rose?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway when you look at this story is just the tragedy of suicide. I don't think I don't
Yes.
think it's in any way related to the work on the case, but the tragedy of suicide and the I talked about the stress involved in my practice, and there's obviously a great deal of stress involved in police work, and the mental health issues that arise, and to me, I just think first and foremost about the tragedy of this officer and not feeling like she could reach out and not having the resources available to her, or not feeling like that those resources would help. I think that's the biggest takeaway that comes to my mind. As far as the case itself, it's hard for me to see how person is going to win a civil verdict in this kind of situation with all the evidence that's coming out. These text messages to me seem very damning to the plaintiff. The authorities have not charged him with any crime. It seems to me like this is certainly a quest for money that may not be substantiated, because, looking at those text messages or the part they show, it seems to me that the intent of those women coming over was to engage in some sort of sexual activity with the men that were over at the house.
Yes, it definitely seems that way, and there was investigating into the LAPD were investigating into a criminal trial. Still no word if they closed that investigation, but you don't think he'll be found liable in the civil?
Well, the standard is less in the civil case, because it's a preponderance of the evidence. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But these these text messages, who knows? Could they be the tip of the iceberg? I don't know. But if there is a verdict, I think there'll be appeals. There'll be more examinations into the cell phone. But when you send a text message contemporaneous or shortly after the supposed event, complaining to Mr. Rose and his buddies why they didn't have sex with another woman you brought over there, that's a hard sell to say that you were too intoxicated, right? That becomes a real tough sell, and I can't imagine a jury looking at that and seeing that the confrontation that involved this alleged victim, that seemingly makes her case a lot less viable.
Have you ever defended a person being accused of rape?
Yeah, I've represented a couple of people accused of sexual assault in a criminal context, not in a civil context.
And if you had this kind of evidence that the Derrick Rose team has, would you feel confident in, I guess, an acquittal? You would have been doing it in a rape case.
Well, I don't think comfort is ever with the criminal defense attorney because of the type of allegations and that sort of thing. So, I am never comfortable at all, but until the verdict is read. So, and you can never be sure. I always tell younger lawyers that you can only be sure of about 90% of what happens in a trial, and 10% is going to be stuff that no one expects, because something's going to come out of some witness's mouth that nobody expected to hear, that sort of thing. And these text messages maybe certainly fall into that category as far as the defense in this case goes.
Absolutely. Now, getting back to your books with dieting and, I guess, losing weight, is the essence of it calories? I mean, what is the meat and potatoes of your plan, I guess, to say?
Well,
a
lot of it. A lot of it does deal with calories, and I talk about some of the how-to. And I did that in my first weight loss book. But in this book, I want to take a look at a little bit more of. I challenge my readers to take a little bit closer look at their relationship with food. Why are they eating? Why are they eating so much? Are they truly happy? Are they truly happy? That sort of thing. So I kind of talk about it's more transformational in how we look at food. And I talk a little bit in the book about diet plans that shift the burden onto somebody else and how we don't really accept responsibility for our own weight loss when we shift, when we join a gym or when we decide we're going to join a certain fitness plan. And when it doesn't work, it becomes the fault of the plan, not the fault of the person. So I talk a lot about that and just really kind of characterizing what food can mean to us and sometimes what our weight can mean to us as well. So it's kind of a little bit into the psychology of eating from my perspective, as well as some what I think are some personal how-tos. And I talk about, my cancer and my fighting back and kind of what I learned through that process.
And do you believe that, well, I've seen it, but there's people that could eat till the cows come home, and they don't gain much weight. And then there are people that could just eat regular, maybe a little bit over, and they're gaining 20, 30 pounds.
Well, there's something to that at certain points in time, but I think that one of the things I point out in this book is that, for those people that are eating however they're eating normal and gaining weight, is that maybe it's time for a change, because if you're eating a certain way and you're gaining weight, then if you want something to change, you have to change something about how you're eating, whether it's more calories, less calories, that sort of thing. If you want to jumpstart a weight loss, you're going to have to step outside of your current patterns, because, let's face it, your current patterns are what got you there to begin with, right? So that's what I kind of challenge people to do when I think about their relationship with food.
Now, the water, I know from other places and things that I won't mention the titles, but I've heard that water is a very good tool to helping people lose weight. Do you agree with that?
Well, to a certain extent, I think, obviously hydration is a big deal just in general health overall. We tend to not drink enough water. And I know I'm guilty of that sometimes as well, especially in the heat of Phoenix. But I think it certainly helps one feel full, and I think that's a lot of what the weight loss does. But I think it certainly has a lot to do with overall function of the body as well. And of course, if we're drinking water, we're also not drinking something that has calories, be that milk or soda or juice. There's no calories in water. So if you're drinking water, you're filling yourself up with something that doesn't put any calories into your body.
No, that's a good point, and it could actually take your mind away from something else. It can actually fill you up, water.
Yes, indeed.
As I noticed. Yeah. So that's one thing. So what do you have, 2 books on this now?
I do. I have the little ebook, and that's available on the Kindle, called Trimmer More there, and that's something somebody can buy right now. And if, like I say, if the next book is going to be absolutely free to people, because, like I say, I consider this kind of a mission So they can go to NurmiUnchained.com and they just put in their name and their email address. And when they do that, when the book's released, they'll get a PDF copy of the book.
Now, there are a lot of people that have lost weight, but then they go back to their old way, i.e. people that have drank, i.e. people that have done other bad stuff. I'll ask you point blank, can you ever see yourself going back to your old lifestyle? Is it possible?
Well, I don't think so. And I think, at least when it comes to eating, because, I think my mindset, and that's why I talk about the relationship with food. My relationship with food is a little different now. When I write in the book, I talk about comfort foods, and maybe all of us grew up with parents or grandparents that cooked for us, and food was a reward. And if you after the soccer game, you go out for ice cream, things like that, and that kind of ingrains in our head, and then that becomes kind of emotional eating. And I think I view food differently now, by and large anyway. There's still times that I'm going to go out and celebrate, and food will be a part of that celebration. But one of the things I point out in the book is that, sometimes we think of eating good food or unhealthy food as a reward.
Yes.
But it's really a punishment because of what we're doing to our bodies, right? And if we truly care about ourselves and care about our lives, then we reward ourselves with food that nourishes our body. And I think, as I went through cancer treatment, I didn't fight for my life and endure what I did through chemotherapy so I could not live my life to the fullest. And, that's part of the reason that I don't ever imagine that I'll go back. You can never say never. You never know, because we do have habits.
Right.
We do have that psychological look. But the life that I say that I work so hard to save is something that I treasure more than I ever did before cancer came into my life. So I'm not going to diminish it or curtail it in any way by letting my weight interfere with anything that I do. And like I say, I've stepped outside of my comfort zone. You want to feel uncomfortable. If you've never done CrossFit before, walk into a CrossFit studio and see some of the awesome things people are able to do, and you can't do a quarter of it, but you're there, and you might be outside your comfort zone, but it's just more reinforcement of change and really empowering yourself. That's why I talk more about transformation, not just calories, but transformation and the way you look at food. Because I think, if you were to go out and your favorite meal was this or that, and you look at it and you go, oh my God, this is high calories, this is ridiculous, you're going to say, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want to celebrate with something else. So that's kind of the overall thought process involved in the book, because I want people to really look at their lives and look at their relationship with food in a very honest way. They have to be honest with themselves.
I heard of this program where they say if you're 80% of the time, quote unquote, good, then you disregard the 20%. In other words, if you follow yourself and you do good 80% of the month or whatever, then it's the 80-20 rule. This particular program I'm aware of. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I tell you, I talk about in my first book, and I talk about it in this upcoming book, about how there's going to be times when you're going to deviate, when you're going to go to celebrations, when you're going to want to, have some pizza, for example, but how you need to get back on the program. That's somewhat similar to what you're talking about, but my fear is that the 20% becomes 25% and gradually increases, and you're not really looking at food a different way, because you're just you feel like maybe you're punishing yourself during the 80% and you're rewarding yourself during the 20%. Then when you got to go back to being good, so to speak, then you feel like you're giving up something. Under what I ultimately advocate is that if you're punishing yourself with this quote unquote cheat food or the 20% food using the program you talk about, you're not going to want that stuff. You're not going to want that stuff, and you're not going to let it slide. And if you go 80-20, in my mind, you're not really creating a firm habit. You're on a diet, and a diet is creating a mindset of deprivation as opposed to a different mindset for food. And that's what I want to advocate, a different mindset for food.
There are situations where you'll be at maybe a wedding, a bar mitzvah, and there's cake there, and that, I guess, what this place is talking about when they meant the 20%. So if they had a piece of cake,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, what I talk about is preparing for events like that. For example, so Jordan, if you're going to go to a wedding and you know there's going to be booze and cake and whatever there is, right? And you know that you want to be a part of that, that you eat super healthy for the few days prior. You still watch what you eat when you're there. You know, you have one piece of cake, not two. You don't drink 10 champagnes. You drink maybe 6, right? And then you cut back the next day. You kind of account for it. So instead of a party being part of the 20% and it goes a couple days and could lapse further, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to loan myself some calories. I'm going to, the story I tell is the Super Bowl 48 where the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. I talk about the champagne, the Skittles, the pizza, whatever it was, and the Jack in the Box tacos. But that was something that I accounted for to some degree, something that I didn't completely account for. But I said, okay, now I did this. How much did I overdo it? How much do I need to knock off my daily intake to make sure that doesn't upset me in terms of the overall weight loss? So it was right back to it. It wasn't like I'm going to indulge. I still got a few more days of indulging. It's my mindset is different. My mindset is I want to eat healthy, but I still want to enjoy this particular endeavor with all these friends and family, and then I'm going to get back to it. And that's the kind of mindset that I advocate. I think it's similar, but I'm a little more strict because if you really follow my mindset, I don't want much more than what I had. You know what I mean? Like I want that deviation and then that's it because I want to get back to it because I care enough about myself and my body that I don't want to let that go into a 20% bender, so to speak.
Interesting indeed. And so that the book is now available, you said?
No, it'll be available by mid-December at the latest, but people can go to NurmiUnchained.com right now and sign up. And when it comes out, they'll get a copy in their email.
And so, yes, did you give them a program to follow or a calendar? What's the?
I don't. I talk about having people invest in their own program and create their own program so they are personally invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, I find that you pass the buck, right? If you Jordan say I want to lose weight, and you're going to go into one of these programs, whatever program it is, and you're going to follow it, and doesn't that put the onus on the program instead of yourself? So when there's a failure, it could be a failure of the program, not your personal failure, right? But if you say I realize that I'm eating 3,000 calories a day, and that's too much, how much can I function? How many calories do I need to function? And you come up with the amount. Then you have become invested in that program. You have designed it. If you say, well, I bet I can lose weight eating 1,800 calories, you design it, you become invested in it, and you want it to work, right? As opposed, and if it doesn't work, it's nobody's fault but your own. It's not the fault of anybody else. It wasn't the wrong program for you. You probably know people that say, oh, I tried this program, that didn't work for me, so now I'm trying this program and that program. But there's always that middleman. And my design is to say, you take responsibility, you do the research, because that's exactly what I did. I said, how many calories am I eating? How many calories should I be eating? And how many calories can I cut down to in order to lose weight? And that's how I lost the 75 pounds. And that's pretty much how I lost the 45 pounds. But I was invested in myself, nobody else. There was no bad program to follow. It was me.
Do you think there is too much of a mentality of people of a celebrating, graduating? Let's all go out to eat. Let's all get ice cream. Don't you think there's too much of that? Let's go to a diner. It's that mentality that I see so much, and let's go to McDonald's. It just seems like so many people use food as a way to celebrate things. You agree or disagree?
Oh yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we think about the holidays and everything like that, and like I mentioned earlier, kids going to soccer practice and having ice cream after the game, or whatever it might be, right? You behave, you get a piece of candy, and that's okay. That's okay. Like, for a kid, I guess we burn it off. But you're right, and that's why I talk about that shift in mentality of food, where we can still celebrate. You can go to the diner with your buddies. You don't have to have the double cheeseburger. You can have the salad. You don't have to punish your body with unhealthy food as a celebration, because it's all around. I mean, you could probably, most major offices, somebody's having a birthday every week, and there's cake all the time, and that's how we celebrate. But when we look at it as a bit more of a punishment, we're punishing our bodies. Maybe you have a different outlook to how big a piece of cake you have, or if you have cake at all. So you're right. We need to, each and every one of us needs to examine our relationship with food, and that's one of the things that I will challenge my readers to do in this upcoming book. Say, hey, why are you eating? Why are you eating that? If you're eating your emotions, then you're probably not eating the right food. And that's a big, important part of it, Jordan.
No question. Let's go to this last story with the serial killer, Adnan Syed. Here's a cut, and we'll talk on the other side.
The 11 News I-Team has learned 21 lead Maryland prosecutors have now lined up against a new trial for Adnan Syed, the Baltimore man at the center of the very popular 2014 podcast Serial. Deborah Weiner joins us from the newsroom with this new information. Deb?
Stan, the Maryland Attorney General's office is appealing a new trial for Syed, and now from Allegheny to Worcester County, the state's attorneys have filed a friend of the court brief, which is made by someone who was not a party to the case. As you recall, Adnan Syed was convicted of the 1999 murder of his former girlfriend, Hae-Min Lee. But over this past summer, a Baltimore judge vacated his murder conviction and ordered a new trial. In the brief, filed with the Court of Special Appeals in Annapolis, the prosecutors said the lower court made a mistake, adding the sensationalized attention surrounding this case fueled by supporters of a convicted murderer and left unanswered by a grieving family who has asked that their privacy be respected, should not bear on the just and proper resolution of this appeal. They said Mr. Syed was convicted by a jury of his peers on crushing evidence of his guilt. The prosecutors from Baltimore County and Baltimore City did not join in this friend of the court brief because the murder occurred in the county and Hae-Min Lee's body was found in Baltimore City. But this is a new development tonight in a case that many continue to follow, wondering what will come next for Syed. Live in the newsroom, Deborah Wiener, WBAL, TV 11 News.
Okay, Kirk Nurmi, this is interesting. This 1999 case be retried. So what is your take on this?
Well, first of all, I find it a little out of bounds for the prosecutors and what they said about this case and their attempt to interfere and file a court brief. I read the court's ruling today ordering that a new trial be granted, and the judge's ruling was pretty specific related to the ineffective assistance of his counsel, and it had nothing to do with the podcast or any of the hullabaloo. Now, I'm going to cop to say that a few people have asked me about this on Twitter, but I certainly haven't followed the podcast. But having read the ruling, I think we certainly, the judge is right in terms of the ineffectiveness of his attorney when you talk about the cell phone data. I mean, we had the cell phone data was not investigated. The reliability of that data was not questioned by his attorney or challenged in any way. And back in 1999, they did not have the sort of data, and I'm blanking right now, it was either on outgoing or incoming calls that would really, it was actually only reliable for outgoing calls, not incoming calls at that point in time. So this conviction is based on part on cell phone data that relates to incoming calls, and his counsel, for whatever reason, didn't pursue that angle because that would make the evidence much less reliable. So I could certainly see why this young man obtained a new trial, and I would strongly dispute the idea that this judge was somehow motivated by this podcast.
Yeah, that does sound a little. That's a little out. That witness. Did you followed enough to know about that witness that wasn't called in the first trial? That's the library. Where she said
this witness was. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say she was pretty much saying that she was with him in that time zone of the alleged crime.
Right, and this witness was mentioned in the brief, and the court, I thought it was interesting, the court commented that it really wouldn't necessarily be material because it wouldn't attack some of the other evidence, particularly the cell phone data. But in terms, and we also, I guess, have some issues about times of killing. But now that we have a new trial and we have all this publicity for it, I suspect the attorney will have counsel that will take a look at that and will take a look at the viability of this alibi witness's testimony, and the jury will decide. Ultimately, now the jury will decide how material that evidence might be.
Yeah, but it's still basically when it gets to the trial, I would say it still looks like a tall mountain, though, for the defense there to get a full acquittal. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to see how it plays out. You know, one of the things that comes to mind to me is when I think about that cell phone data in 1999, obviously we have a lot more towers now, that probably wouldn't really come into play, but whether the technology is such now where they could possibly the incoming and outgoing calls could be more, pick out a specific area relates to those calls. Memories change, things change, so it's hard to say without knowing every bit of evidence that it's a tall order, but certainly what I always say, it's always a tall order for any criminal defendant that's accused of a horrific crime, right? Because they're accused of a horrific crime. That's not a position that where you're in a position of strength no matter what. You are on the defense from jump, so it's always a tough situation, but like I said earlier, I'm sure he's going to have some good attorneys, and how the evidence has changed over these so many years will really be an interesting kind of examination, and something that the jury's going to have to grapple with, because memories are going to fade. Witnesses are going to maybe, have their memories fade. Cops retire, possibly people have passed away that were involved in the case. So all sorts of things can happen in that many years, and that's why we have statutes of limitations and things like that aren't going to apply in this case. But that's certainly going to make the case challenging, maybe perhaps for both sides.
And in '99, the cell phones, in terms of there being cell phones, very new to the population in terms of how it is now. I mean,
yeah,
totally different. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, you bet. I mean, back in '99, I don't even know if I had a cell phone. I'm sure a lot of people didn't. But
I think I had a prepaid one.
Awesome. I read some of those old phones are so funny now. You think about them, but I'm pretty sure I did not have a cell phone when I was in law school. So a lot and the amount of towers has increased, and I don't think the amount of towers is going to enhance that. But what exactly that cell phone data can tell us now, maybe with more modern eyes, it could be telling. I don't know.
Okay, let's, before we go, we have one caller that managed to stay on in that 15-minute time frame. Our law